people always ask me about the PhD and reaching that PhD. What made me start thinking about it was I met Dr. Robert Perry, who was a black man who worked as a professor at St. Peter's College. He ran a program that at my high school, and I met him my freshman year. I wasn't in the program, but I got to see this black man enter the school. And the leadership at the school was primarily all black. But when Dr. Perry walked into school, people got tight. People got serious when Dr. Perry walked into the school. So I'll never forget exit day program, and Dr. Perry walks up to the stage, does a mic check. Dr. Robert Perry, he put the microphone down and walked away. And at that moment, I said, I'm going to become a doctor.
All right, welcome back to the Speak Life podcast. This is Mark Mead, and we are sowing seeds today for tomorrow's harvest. We have a very distinguished guest with us today, Dr. Toro Yates. I'm excited to have him in the building with us today to kind of go over some of the stuff he's done in the community and all the stuff he's doing. But I want to give you a little bit of his background. Toro Yates, PhD.
Yes.
An adjunct professor, author, motivational speaker, and consultant. You're currently right now the Vice President for Student Development and Enrollment Management at Hostos Community College, CUNY. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Previous roles included serving as a Chief Enrollment Management Officer at a 4-year private public institution, multicultural recruiter and Director of Enrollment at an independent day school. I mean, you've been a first-generation college student and Jersey City native. You have a double master's degree.
Yes.
MBA and an MIS.
Yes. From
St. Peter's University. Then you went on and got a PhD in educational leadership. I mean, my man, you crushing it. Management and policy from Seton Hall University. And it seems like from your biography that your list just goes on and on and on and on. So it is beyond, without a shadow of a doubt, it is an honor to have you in here today and to kind of cover some of this, Dr. Yates. Just some of your background, where you're coming from, and thank you for jumping on with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I think the best way to describe myself is that I'm from the South. I was born in Richmond, Virginia, grew up in South Carolina to the age of 13. Okay. So I like to say I have a Southern ethos, a Southern moral fiber. Okay. But then my mom moved us to Jersey City in 1985.
Got it.
So added to that, an urban grit. So a Southern gentleman with an urban grit.
I like it, brother.
And finding a way, not out of where I'm from, finding a way to help improve where I'm from has been my mission my entire career.
I like that. I don't think I've heard that before. Most people do talk about a way out.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Where you from?
So, Midtown Jersey City, Lincoln High School. Okay. When I give a speech, I talk about 3 things that are very important to me. One is Sadie. That's my mom who went home to glory 10 years ago. She was a single mother who raised 3 kids by herself.
God rest her soul.
My father was murdered when I was 15 months old.
Wow.
So my mother at 26, 27 had to go get it, and she did.
Wow.
She raised 3 soldiers.
All boys?
All boys.
Okay.
2 is Lincoln High School. Okay. Lincoln High School, at the time where I graduated, was a part of a documentary called Flunk City. So the state took over Jersey City during my senior year. And then lastly is Jersey City, which at the time when I came through was one of the worst cities in the country. Those are the 3 things that helped shape me into the man that's sitting in front of you today.
Wow. I mean, but again, with such a decorated background, such a decorated biography, such a decorated seasoned history of chasing education.
Yes.
There had to be something birthed inside of you that created that kind of hunger. Because most people don't have the credentials that you have, or they don't chase it, right? So talk to us a little bit about the seed that was birthed in you to go after it the way you did.
Yeah, so I have 2 older brothers. And as I mentioned, and my oldest brother was an All-American high school player. He made a child when he was 17 years old. So all those scholarship offers and different things that were once on the table dissipated.
Really?
My middle brother watching our family dynamic, said, when I graduate high school, I'm going into the Marine Corps because I'm going to provide a way for you, younger brother, because you're going to go get it.
That's you.
That's me.
Okay.
So between my two older brothers and my mother, they crafted the plan. It's kind of like it starts at the top. If it don't work for him, it goes down to the next one. If it doesn't work for him, it goes down to the next one. So when it came to me, I had the resources of my entire household, which wasn't much, but they formulated the plan, and the plan was for me to go. Now, how I get there, how I do it, many of us did not have an idea of how to make that happen. So a lot of this was trial and error. When I left to go to Virginia State University, my mother gave me the equivalent of about $50. She bought a car that probably cost about $150. I had my license for about 3 months. And she said, make it to Petersburg, Virginia. Your grandmother lives 30 miles away at Blackstone.
Okay.
So that was the plan.
Got it.
So that goes to show you that wasn't a great plan. It goes to show you that it's the grace of God.
Amen.
And it's perseverance. And a lot of this, I was making it up as I was going.
That's strong.
For sure.
But you know what you said? You said if it didn't work for my oldest brother, it went to the middle brother. And if it didn't work for him, it went down to me. So you said I didn't have a lot of resource, but I had what I had. And I think what I heard was you had community.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing like backing.
Yeah.
It's nothing like belief backing. People who are going to give everything they have to try to help you. And that typically will come from family.
Yes.
And not every family is structured that way. Not every family has a situation where, one of the siblings or an older sibling says, man, listen, I'm gonna do everything I can to get you where you need to be.
Yeah.
And it's sacrificial coming from your mom down. So that's a heck of a household with or without the finances.
Yeah. And I want to add my godmother, Miss Bush. I want to add Miss Smith down in South Carolina. I want to add Miss McIntyre. It was the community and my friends. A lot of my friends who were out in the streets at a very young age came off the porch at a very young age. They wouldn't let me get near the porch. I could sit and watch, but on many nights I got sent home because they said, "Country," that's my nickname. One day you're going to show that everybody in this community ain't crazy. So it was a community mission.
Wow.
If you think about where I grew up, there was probably maybe one person who have reached the academic credentials that I have today in that entire community over a 30-year span. So it's definitely less than a handful. So it was a community effort, and they really poured into making sure I was okay. So that's why every step I make sure that I reach my hand back.
That's huge.
It started at a very young age for me.
That's incredible.
Again, 14 years old, I was already going into my sophomore year of high school. And I was figuring this thing out. And the question often, people always ask me about the PhD and reaching that PhD. And an interesting reason, what made me start thinking about it, was I met Dr. Robert Perry, who was a black man who worked as a professor at St. Peter's College. He ran a program that at my high school. And I met him my freshman year. I wasn't in the program, but I got to see this black man enter the school. And the leadership at the school was primarily all black. But when Dr. Perry walked into school, people got tight. They got serious when Dr. Perry walked into the school. So I'll never forget exit day program, and Dr. Perry walks up to the stage, does a mic check. Dr. Robert Perry, he put the microphone down and walked away. And at that moment, I said, I'm going to become a doctor. The reason why is because now I can say, to me, he was visible as a black man. I never saw that before.
Wow.
I didn't know that at 17. 17, I said, oh, he got a doctor by his name. So I want to do that. I didn't know what type of doctor, what it took to become a doctor, how long it took to become a doctor.
Right,
I didn't know any of that.
Right.
But that was the seed. It was planted in that moment. So after that, everything I've done in my life was working towards that goal. But the more I learned about it, I realized again that this man was visible. I used to watch a a white woman in the school, and she was a very nice lady. I want to preference by saying that. But she used to almost laugh at the principal, this black man in the school. The level of, and again, you're looking from a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't think she had that she respected the principal. But when Dr. Perry walked into school, she was she was moving at a different speed. So again, he was visible. So my whole life, I've been chasing being visible when I walk out into the world. And when I found out what it means to be visible, it's been my mission to make sure I share that with every young person I get in contact with.
What is your definition of being visible? Has it changed since you first learned since you first, tangibly said that to yourself?
Yes. So my I love the way you framed that. So when I was 17 years old, I thought of it as purely respect. And again, people getting tight, people getting nervous when this person walked in. But over the years, it became a little bit more complex for me. Because once you're visible, then you got to do something with it. So what I started thinking about is being visible. I want the world to see me. But in seeing me, I want them to see a legacy. I want them to see the opposite of so much of what I grew up around. When I would walk outside when I was going to school, the school was a block away. But when I turned left and I turned right, there was decisions that I had to make. And there was a lot of young kids who were looking at me. And I made a silly mistake in college, my freshman year, and came home early. But when I came home, those little kids in the neighborhood said, "Country, what are you doing here? Why are you home so early?"
Wow.
And that was a moment that helped shape my life because I never wanted to have to answer those questions again. Wow. So I was visible, but I realized I was visible even at that young age. I was already visible. So I started trying to figure out, what do I do with it? How do I harness it? How do I be able to use it in a way that's going to help others make better decisions?
Man, I mean, to carry that banner so early and I'm sure it was hard to understand at that age that it would be a life banner. I mean, you sit here today, and that's one of the number one things you're talking about.
Yeah,
is the banner of giving back and being of assistance and service to people and kids and growing up. And so you saw that at a very young age, but you carried it all your life. How heavy is that banner, or how light have you made it throughout the years?
So in my early days, it was very heavy, and I wanted no part of carrying it. I was running towards the action. I was running towards death because when I started high school, I was 13. So I wanted to be the cool kid. I wanted to be around the action. And again, it was so many people that just would not allow me to do that. They said, "No, you got something different.
Wow.
You got something different that you got to do for us." They said, "You do, because you could walk around here and you don't have no problems. So you, I say, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to, no." So I couldn't do the things that I so enjoyed, I thought I enjoyed.
Wow.
They wouldn't allow me to do it. So in my youth, I was called College Boy. My guys, my crew, 151, College Boy, that's their name for me to this day. It was heavy when I was young because it wasn't just my younger nephews and nieces that was watching it, but it was my peers that were cheering me on and watching. And every step I made, if I turned around, I would look and I would see 20 people watching. And they say, "Oh, he made that step. Okay, let's make the step."
Wow.
So that was a lot for me at a young age, carrying that type of responsibility. And as I went into my career and I would give these speeches, I used to talk from this level of pain very quickly because I want to establish, especially if I'm in Harlem, if I'm in Compton, if I'm on the south side of Chicago, I wanted to connect from a tribal sense very quickly. I want to establish my bona fides urban all day. But every time I would finish that speech, I would be so drained that I didn't want to do it the next day.
Wow.
So I had to realize that I couldn't stay in that pain.
Whoa.
I had to figure out a way to be able to connect very quickly,
Yes, sir.
but then start to pivot and start working towards this is how you move away from that pain. I didn't fully know how to do it. For me,
Or for your audience?
for both.
Got it.
Because when I first started in my career, I didn't know about the type of resources that I would find out later that helped me. So over the past November, it'll be 7 years, I've been utilizing therapy, mental health counseling, marriage counseling, utilizing every resource possible because I had to learn how to heal for myself, for things that I knew, some things in my family history that I didn't know and I found out later in life. So these things were impacting my growth. So I had to figure out a way, how can I survive? You go back 7 years ago, I was burgeoning in my career. My wife and I do well. I was a couple years of being doc. It's a different experience when you have a PhD and the way people react to you. All those things, all positive indicators, but there were elements of my life I was miserable. And I got to a point where I had to search out resources. And I met a therapist. She's a Black Christian woman. She's married to a Black man. She has a Black son. So when I sat on her couch that first time, she heard me. And my whole life up to that point, I don't know if I really had folks hearing me.
Wow.
Here's the direction you go. So I know that, but I mean hearing me and what I thought about things in that way. So I am a proponent of, in the Black community, making sure that we are utilizing the resources that are available because it's a stigma attached to it. Think about this. 15 months old, you can almost say I was born into violence. This is no disrespect to Sadie, because my mom is a warrior. She raised 3 soldiers. Yet, imagine if we would have been able to get mental health counseling at that young age. Because my oldest brother, who's 9 years old, experienced this. And he experienced it through the lens of, I can speak from a urban Black experience, although we're not a monolith. But it's an experience, actually it goes across all cultures. When the man in the house dies, the next oldest male in the house is now the man of the house.
Yes, sir.
You could be 5. So at 9 years old, not only did my oldest brother take on that responsibility, he took it serious. So the question is, at what point, and he had dealt with a horrific experience already by that age. So at what point does he get a reprieve? At what point is he able to relax? And I will argue that with him being 59 years old, that he still hasn't had that chance yet. So that's the key to helping me, because I did a program, it was called Grief Recovery. So I actually went through this process over 8 weeks and came to these 4 or 5 points of grief for me.
There are different points for different people?
Yeah.
Got it.
Based on your life.
Your experience. Got it. Yeah.
And 1 or 2 of those was something I never even had on my radar.
It's crazy.
So, and the unfortunate part, when you think about the 70s and this moment happening for the Yates family, was that the resources for poor families weren't there for mental health. And then the stigma attached to it. So you fast forward 50 years later, you still have those same issues for poor people, access to resources and the stigma that's attached to it. So I'm very happy to say that it's 2 things I think I've been able to do for the Yates family and those around me. 1 is education is the path towards success, and they can see it in real time. In one generation, I have a niece that finished a master's degree. I have a niece that graduated undergrad in 3 years and finished law school before she was at 23 years old.
Wow.
So in one generation, if you will, you have 2 doctors in this family that started with my father being murdered when I was 15 months.
Wow.
So education is the power. Education is the key. That's one. Secondly, I think I have demystified mental health and utilizing resources from my family, because now we're starting to utilize them at different ages within my family dynamic. And I believe it's because I stepped forward and said, this is what I am doing. And the tragedies that will continue to happen, we have to now figure out ways that we can deal with them, heal from them, and move forward. Because if
powerful.
not, you get date stamped when that moment happened.
Ooh.
So for my oldest brother, it was 8 years old, 9 years old. That's the stamp. That's the moment that shifted his life forever. So I owe.
Wow.
And that's how I look at it. So that visibility, I now think about it as that's my payback.
Wow.
I have a godson who is a Mason. We call him May. He's around 3 years old, maybe 4. I'm teaching him visibility now. I have a goddaughter, Kaylee. She's 6. Actually, she corrected me the last time. She's 7. And she's visible now at 7 in a way that I couldn't even dream about at 7 years old. So that's the key, and that's how I'm moving.
Makes sense, man. That's very, very powerful. That's cute, very powerful for the community. It's powerful for your legacy. It's powerful for generations. This plays itself out in a lot of different ways because you have a lot of different hats.
Yes.
But it's very clear for me, I hope it's clear for our listeners, that you are very serious about passing the torch and being a light to people to see what is possible.
Yes.
And so you show up in different places, right? And you show up in different places with that mindset.
Yes.
And I swear, I mean, that is such a great mindset because it's like a igniter of empowerment.
Yes.
You show up, empowerment must take place. That's what I think I heard. And so that's different because not everybody thinks like that. And so when you come on any scene, like you're involved in so many different areas, you talk about, empowering children and from the youngest age, from 0 to 36 months, all the way up until obviously different levels of education and even now mental health. Talk to us a little bit about what it means for you to show up. What parts of your community, with your professional background, that you're impacting on a day-to-day basis? Because we kind of need to, we need to kind of get a rally around you. I mean, based on the light that you are. And so if you could shed anything on kind of where you are, where you're impacting, where those seeds are being planted,
Sure.
that would provide tremendous insight for us.
Sure. So I believe in the principle of culture for service and service for humanity. And what that means to me is that I show up every day knowing that people are watching. I chose Hostos Community College. I chose the South Bronx. I chose everything that comes with the South Bronx. There, right across the street from me is two parallels, if you will. You have the front part of the block, that's the South Bronx that was on fire 50 years ago. You go, the other part of the block that's close to the water is all high-rise buildings. It's called Sobro. Yeah, Sobro. So it used to be all those factories and all those things have now been replaced with high-rise buildings. So that's beautiful.
Gentrification.
The problem with that is that, again, the South Bronx is the poorest congressional district in the United States.
Really?
Yes. But if you add 20 buildings that have 50 people in 50 apartments in each of those buildings, multiply that out to maybe 2,000 people, 3,000 people. The socioeconomic or the incomes of those folks living in those 20 buildings
I know where you're going with this.
can change that rating of the South Bronx. Now let's understand, the other 99% of the South Bronx hasn't changed.
I knew you was gonna say. I knew where you was going.
So that's the problem. So when I walk through the community, and I want to be clear in saying that I chose the South Bronx. I chose Hostos Community College.
Right.
So at the time when I transitioned from York College, I had 6 months to try to figure out what I wanted to do next. So I'm a God-led man. I have been complaining to God, complaining because of this work and the load, and it's so heavy. And I said, I don't want to do it anymore.
The South Bronx or your life call?
Life call, and at the time it was Jamaica Queens.
Got it.
At York College.
Okay.
And I kept talking about it.
To you and God, or to you and you?
To me and God.
Okay.
Well, actually, to pretty much anybody that listens to me. My wife probably could recite this story for you. So, and God heard me, and I was unceremoniously let go from York College, and I wasn't hurt as much about being fired from a job. That happens.
Wow.
I was more upset because I felt it was unceremonious.
Okay.
But God had a bigger picture for me. He said, I want you to relax. I want you to get some rest, because that's all I've been talking about. I want rest. I'm tired. I'm tired. So this moment happened to me. I knew that I would be able to get another job before the year ended. This is June going into July. I knew that. I knew it. But I couldn't sit still. So if the separation happened on July 1, by July 7th, I had already had 5 interviews.
Did you take the interviews?
Oh yeah, I was in. I'm
So
at the
much
computer
for
at 9:00 in the morning with a suit on. My wife looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" Rest. That's what she kept saying to me. And it took about 2 months, and these 2 job opportunities presented itself. So I knew, but it's going to take probably another 2 months. So that's August when I see these jobs. So it's going to take another 2 months. I went to a football game, and a good friend of mine from high school, his son was playing on one team. And then that same high school, my brother-in-law was he's a guidance counselor in the school. He calls the football games. So I get a twofer going to the game. Go to the game, I see my guy Bosco, and he looked older. He's 2 years older than me, but something wasn't right. And I see him, and at halftime, I thought it was like senior week or something. It was Cancer Awareness Week. Wasn't paying attention.
Got it.
He comes off the field, he whispers into my ear. He said, Country, I don't think you know, but I've been battling stage 4, if I'm not mistaken, cancer, for 6 months.
Whoa.
And I sat stunned for the rest of that game. But I was stunned, but I was watching him, and I saw a level of, I think he was scared, but not scared about death. I think he was scared because he has a 10-year-old son. And I think he was scared that he wouldn't be able to see that youngest play in the same way he watched his other 2 sons play. And when I left that game and I went home, I understood. I understood that God had a bigger mission for me. And I need to now fall in line. So that's what I did. I fell in line. And when I gave it over to God, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I get the call for an interview. I got multiple jobs on the table. When I start researching Hostos, I just smiled. I was like, all right, I got it. So to get back to your question, I show up because when I walk around the campus, I kid you not, people from the neighborhood, they see the suit, they see a black man, and some folks in the community literally salute when I walk around. They see me come out of the building, they know my connection to the school, and they are proud of me. And these are people from, when they first walk up, some of them have a screw face on, and then they look at me, and then they do like this. And I smile, respect, and we keep moving. But that's outside the school and inside the school. So I show up every day because I know it's bigger than me.
That's amazing. Who have you looked to? You talked about meeting with, I don't know, did you say psychiatrist or psychologist?
I would say therapist.
Therapist
Yeah.
who helped you out. But then, obviously, you've had your brothers involved. Were there any outside forces, mentors, people that you continue to counsel with today that help you with decisions?
Yes. So, interesting enough, the importance of mentors is simply there are many young people, young persons who on their own maybe don't know how to, they don't have the courage or the wherewithal to walk up to someone and say, it is such a pleasure to see you and meet you. I don't know what you do, but I want to do that. And can you show me how to do it?
That doesn't happen enough, is what you're saying.
Correct. Okay. And as in my youth, what I would do is I would pick certain people and I would model. Many of these folks had no clue they were my mentors. Had no clue. I tell you one of the first, I would say, from a professional standpoint, who was a mentor for me was Johnny Cochran. And it was during the trial of the century. And every day this man walked into that courtroom, everybody got tight. The same way I saw Dr. Perry. They got tight, and everybody stopped what they were doing and watched this man walk into that courtroom. Everybody. So I started to mimic. I listened to the way he spoke. I watched the way he dressed. I couldn't afford it, obviously. I was walking around with a briefcase, right? It was anything I could find that was a connection to him. A person, Joseph Baccia, an attorney, watched him from the neighborhood, watched him work his way through law school, become a partner in a law firm. Now he watched him purchase a home, property. Him and my oldest brother around the same age. Both of them had to get off the porch at a very young age. And I mean get off the porch like, I need you to go find something and help. And to see that, and to see over the years how education helped transform his life, and I stay in touch with him. But I only told him 8 years ago, that he was my mentor. So all those years, he had no clue, but I was watching every move. I was watching every step. But then, as I started to persist in college, definitely professors, the Franklin Walker, who's the former superintendent of Jersey City School District, he was the AD in my high school, right during my tenure, and he was pouring into me when I was a freshman in high school, through my senior year, and over life he stayed in contact. So every opportunity he could help right the ship, he was always there for me. So it's a litany of them. Mr. Bush, it's so many to name, but I think the key for me was I didn't have my voice yet. So I didn't know how to ask people to help. And I actually turned down help because there were some people in the community, and good people, I presume, but when I felt like they judged me, as they should, Because in my youth, I had this big nappy afro, screw face. I had on a lumberjack jacket in the summertime. Yeah, I would have been scared of that person too. But I needed people who could look beyond those things and find that spark.
That's strong.
To say, yeah, it's something about this kid. A lot of kids don't walk around quoting Shakespeare. A lot of kids don't write and read in the way that I see this kid writing and reading. He has an interest, and I believe that's what caught the attention of so many people, too many to name. And I try to be the person that I wanted when I was young. So when I was young, I could see very clearly the silhouette of a person. I saw the suit, I saw a pocket square, but I didn't see a face. And it started when I was very young. So that person was me. But to get from my start to where I am now, there wasn't no playbook. I couldn't see the steps. So if there's anything I want to leave that I would love for people to latch onto is this. You mentioned showing up in yourself. And it's a different selves, right? Different ways we could show up. It's important for us to, when we speak to younger people, to realize that we're speaking to them in who we are right now, but many of them may not know the steps to get to that point. So yes, we want to show up as the professional and the person that we are now, but we can't forget the journey that it took for us to get to this place. Quick example, I spoke at an 8th grade graduation. 8th grade young man came to me. He lived by Duncan Projects, one of the rougher projects to this day in Jersey City. And he said to me, I live on the other side of the park. To get to school every day, I have to go through different gang areas. How do I navigate that to be able to get to school, to be able to do what I need to do?
Wow.
So that's a whole different set
Yes, sir.
of a lens to think about that self. So if I come to now, I got to recalibrate to answer that question.
Right.
I haven't dealt with that in 30 years.
Right.
So if I can't remember or connect back to what that was for me,
Wow.
how did I survive when I came outside? If I make a left or right, those decisions are going to impact my day.
Wow.
If I don't get out that car in that moment, it is going to impact my day and life. So that's what I mean, that sometimes many of us, we have to put our life badge to the side a little bit.
Wow.
And meet students, young people where they are.
Yes. I love that. I want to get into your sports background a little bit, but before I do that,
Sure.
You mentioned that there were two people that you looked at that had to get off the porch
Yes.
and go get something,
Go get
do
it.
something, which is you got to bring money into this household because
Yes.
ain't enough money coming in this household. So
Correct.
for people that need some interpretation on that, like that's like, you know, you're becoming a man before you become a man.
Yes.
Because we need you to step up in this household because right now there ain't enough money at the end of the month.
Correct.
Is that
100%? Yes, sir.
And so, what have you seen with that role generationally inside of the Black community, and how does that role impact? Because I've seen that in my family.
Yes.
I've seen that with multiple levels of. I'm third from the top. There's 8 of us. So my oldest brother had to do that. My second oldest brother had to do that. There was a time when I had to do that. What have you seen, and how has that impacted? You know, it shows. I see it show up a lot in the Black community because of the lack of fathers.
Yeah.
Right. And so, how has that impacted, or what you've seen?
Yeah.
The community.
So, for my oldest brother, and for many in the community, I pause before making judgments. I look at my oldest brother on almost like a cheat code a little bit, or almost like a sliding scale, because I know how much he had to sacrifice. I know what getting off the porch was for him. I witnessed it. So I know full well. And a few others that I mentioned, I saw what it was for them to have to do that. One of the issues is that in deciphering the Black urban experience is that many times we look at it in its current existence, but we don't look at the things. We don't look at the policies and laws on the books on one side, the policies and laws on the books that are being enforced on the other side. So yes, many people have heard of Jim Crow, right? We start taking steps out for Reconstruction. Jim Crow era happens, pulls all that back. Now you start going into the 60s. You have the GI Bill. So you coming out of war times, you had African American people, Black people who served, who have this benefit of the GI Bill that during that time period in the 60s and 70s helped to build the quote unquote middle class. Yet there were some of us who earned the right to have that benefit and were not allowed to take advantage of it. Then you go into redlining. The community I live in right now, 50, 60 years ago, I couldn't have lived in that community. So and then think about redlining. Redlining tax base, resources, where students can go to school, what resources are attached to a school. Then you move forward and you talk about an exodus of Black men from the Black community, let's call it 1982 to 1995, when crack cocaine hit Black America, urban America. We are still dealing with that gap of 800,000 million Black men taken out of the community, and then how they were reintegrated back into the community. So if you think about that, you think about mandatory minimums. You think about the crime bill of 1998, where if you have a felony and then you cannot connect with your family who are on public assistance. Think about, and I left a major one out, during wartime, when there was these union jobs that helped build the middle class. Again, we were cut out from those jobs and opportunities. So when you add it all up, it's an amalgam of steps that's going to lead to the current existence and where we are right now.
Wow.
So I do not make an excuse for anyone. We have to do better in our communities.
Amen.
We have to. We have to step forward. We have to gain the respect again of our children and our wives and our partners and our community. We have to stop tearing it up. But the moment as we continue to work towards building a legacy, that's when those dominoes start to align. That's when the cards start to fall in the right way. Because I believe that there's some work that has to be done. Yes, the current existence. But we have to acknowledge the past. And how can we learn from that? So this new generation that's coming up, how can we help them? How can we till the soil, plant the seeds, remove the weeds, pour the water on it? So 30 years from now, we're looking at something different. I like to say in my current capacity that God has removed me from my hands being deep in the soil and doing that work, to the point that I'm now turned that work over to that next generation who has that tie and connection to the community. And now I represent the sun and those rays of education that's helping to grow that next generation.
Praise God, man. Listen, at the end of the day, what you represent is the path that the urban kids in the urban community are walking through, that you're able to say, watch that landmine over there, watch that landmine over here. Here's a light so you can see your way through the tunnel. like you're basically a major advocate
Sure.
for, education, higher education, and practicality, if you will,
Yeah.
on survival skills.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's interesting. This young generation is not trying to hear the bow tie guy. I wear a bow tie every day. It's too hot now.
I thought, listen, man, I was
I
told
probably
that
got-
you.
I have it in
was
my
told
pocket.
you had the bow ties. I was excited about it. Oh, okay.
Oh, come on
We in
now.
the building. All right, we made it. We made it.
I'm the bow tie guy. So when I mentioned to you earlier about meeting young people where they are,
Yeah.
I had to recognize, like, oh, they're not thinking about country from Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm Dr. Yates to them.
Gotcha.
So how do I connect to them? So I Midtown, JC, Lincoln High School, throw it like up. I get aggressive real quick. Let's be clear about where I'm from. But that's that I connect with them on a tribal lens early because they can look in my eyes and tell where I'm from.
Right.
But in that initial interaction, they ain't trying to hit a bow tie guy. If I don't start off and make that tribal connection, they not trying to hear it. And I tell them, I'm gonna make this tribal connection with you, and then we're gonna move on. So let's get this out the way.
Right.
I'm you. Let's talk about it.
That's strong.
Sadie, let's
so
talk about it.
important.
Lincoln High School, let's talk about it. Jersey City, let's talk about it. Okay. Now, I was able to pivot from that, and let me show you how to do that. Because it's a lot better over here. And there's steps. Because I couldn't see the guy with the suit on, the pocket square, the bow tie. I couldn't see the face when I was 8 years old or 9 years old. So I want to take that. I want to fill in that face for that young person now.
That's amazing. But sports were a heavy part of your background.
Yes.
And obviously, there's a lot of difference that can be made in the arena of sports. And when you think about your upbringing in sports, you said you were an All-American football player.
Yes.
I mean, hard to leave that out because there's so many young people that are chasing after sports as a way out, as a way to, you see these contracts now. You see guys getting 25, 30, 50, 60, $70 million a year to play sports. You played sports. How are you using that background to connect with the youth, and how did that impact your journey on the way up?
So I started playing football because it was a part of life in the South.
Okay.
You below Maryland, and you over a certain size. Like you would get ran out of town if you don't play sports. So it was ingrained in me. But when I moved to Jersey, it became a safe zone for me. My football team was comprised of people that was in the streets from every block almost in Jersey City. So that created a pass for me. So I would walk by, oh, that's a little country guy. I'm 13 years old. It was survival for me at first. And then it turned to discipline. Then it turned to my clock is still 5 minutes ahead because if you show up on time, you late.
You late.
Training. And then, yes, the notoriety that comes with it, the being the kind of proverbial man on campus comes with it. I love to say that I was never a jock. Never in my life was I a jock. School was always first for me. I didn't know the importance of school being first in my younger days. That's the key, is being able to stay in the game. I literally, because I was so young, think about this. My first semester of college at Virginia State University, I was 17 years old. I was not prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically at all to be able to go to that school and survive. Actually, I take that back. I was bred to survive, but to thrive, I wasn't prepared. So that experience that's where that grit came in from Jersey City. And by the time I transferred out of Virginia State University and I transferred to St. Peter's, that's when it started to click for me. and I was probably around 19 years old. And I really started to think about the classroom in a way that I thought about being on the field. So as my body started to mature, as I started to become a warrior on the field, in the classroom, specifically at St. Peter's, I started to dominate in a different way because I figured out the key to education.
It's huge.
And the key to education on a college level, and I'm a professor, the adjunct professor in the doctoral program at Seton Hall University. I'm gonna give the key. You ready?
Yes.
On the first day of class, the professor is gonna write on the board, or it's in the syllabus, all the things you need to do to get a good grade. Do no more or do no less. Do exactly what the professor tells you to do. If the professor says submit 3 pages, don't submit 8 pages. Submit 3 pages. But to submit those 3 pages means that you have to focus and narrow scope. And the more I started to prepare in that way, my grades started to change. I went from a 2 I transferred into St. Peter's with like a 2.1 GPA, just enough to stay eligible because I was surviving at Virginia State.
Sure.
I graduated, it was around a 2.8. I finished a double master's degree with a 3.57. And I finished my doctorate, and I like to tease my niece who just finished law school. And I say, I'm the highest ranking academic official in his family because I finished my PhD with a 3.89.
Nice.
0.01 from making summa cum laude. So I talk about it. But that comes from me getting excited and learning.
Right.
So imagine I talk to you about that 6-year-old goddaughter of mine, 7-year-old goddaughter. Her mind is awake. It took me a senior in college to awaken that mind that is awake in that 7-year-old. That's the difference. That's the legacy. So athletics has been a major part for me. It started out as my way primarily of connecting with some of the youth and talking about sports as an opportunity.
Makes sense.
What it transformed into was talking about the college experience in general. So the keys to the college experience is, 1, graduate undergrad with the least amount of debt as possible. So what happens, New Jersey has a grant that's called TAP. That's the highest state grant, one of the highest state grants in the United States. New Jersey's also been a state, probably going back to the late 70s, early 80s, that export the highest number of students out of state every year.
Wow.
So think about that. You have this really high state grant way of helping students pay for college that many students who could utilize it are not taking advantage of it. So what that leads to is disillusionment because students, some of them go away to college.
Right.
They go away to a tier 3 Carnegie designated school. Many of them are the small, private, religious-based institutions that unfortunately are closing in a higher number yearly. So if a student graduates from a college and the tuition at that college was $50,000 per year, typically a college would discount half of that.
Right.
We're still talking about $100,000 in loans that a student took out to graduate from a tier 3 level institution. Now, competitiveness. Level 1, tier 1, that's the Harvards, the Northwesterns, the Duke, etc.
Sure.
Right? Then you have your tier 2 schools that could be anywhere from Loyola, Maryland, that could be the Seton Halls, the Fordhams, etc.
Okay.
And then you have your tier 3 schools. And it's okay to graduate from any school because I believe there's a benefit from graduating from a college. But about 18 years ago, parents started to ask about ROI, return on investment. That changed the whole game. when parents start to think about, if I'm paying this
Right.
$50,000 per year, what am I going to get? What is my son or daughter going to get on the back end? What's the alumni base? When students graduate, what's their career placement percentage? Average starting salary. Those are the things that parents want to know.
Sure.
And if you think about it, in today's time, if a student graduates college and get a job making $45,000 a year, $48,000 a year, first job, they are winning. A lot of students and parents are going into undergrad thinking that when they graduate, that first job is going to be $80,000 a year. That's where the disillusionment comes in. And that's where a lot of people become very unhappy about the college experience.
Got it.
Now, take that same student, maybe the student's from Middlesex County. Let's say the total household income is $175,000.
Right.
Why not go to Rutgers University, New Brunswick? Rutgers is a Colonial 8, one of the first universities established in the United States. The other 7 colleges are Ivy League. Go to one of the New Jersey State institutions. I'm a board of trustee member at St. Peter's University. St. Peter's is a Hispanic serving institution, been that way for 25 years. They give a lot of scholarships for students to attend the institution. If you leave and go out of state, you're going to leave $12,000 plus or whatever that amount is for TAP on the table. If you're going to leave and go out of state, one, make sure that that college is going to match whatever that grant is and then some. If you stay in state, why not commute those first 2 years? Why not, if you're a marginal student, go to a community college for 2 years, graduate with an associate degree, improve your GPA, improve your knowledge base of how to be a good student, earn a scholarship, and then you cut that cost in half. Those are the strategies that we need to employ.
That's huge.
We need to do that because students are graduating with $40,000, $50,000, $75,000
in debt.
Undergrad. So that's going to delay the first purchase of a washing machine, first purchase of a car.
And the interest rates right now are crazy.
Yes. Because on top of, once students max out on the...
Kids got mortgage payments coming out of college.
They do.
That's
and
crazy.
once students max out on the federal loans, now these are private loans. And that's where the whole market changes. The whole game changes because these private loans are based off of the family's family income and circumstances create that interest rate.
Right.
Some of these private loans could be 10%, 18%.
It's nuts.
So on top of that $50,000, $75,000, there's that interest rate that's attached to it.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah, there's a lot of people angry about higher education.
So with that said, I was going to say, with that said, because higher education, we're talking undergrad right now, but you know, when it comes to higher education, you're obviously a proponent of, double masters, a PhD. You've
go get it.
You scaled the ladder of education. What is your advice to young people on higher education and what it can do for them in the marketplace? Is it a waste of time? Is it something that they should be seeking? Does one size fit all? Should everyone be going after this? Should everyone be declining it? What is your take on that?
Sure. So I'm an educator, but we have to think about degree attainment. Degree attainment could be a 3-week certificate program at a community college. For people in the South Bronx, that certificate is the starting point so that they can enter the marketplace. It's not going to be enough to sustain them, but it's an entry point. So I think that we should look at the continuum of higher education from certificates, associate degrees, bachelor's, master's, advanced degrees. There was a study some years ago, and this is just data crunching. It took a look at lifetime earnings, and that's when a person from 16 to retirement age. So we're talking about roughly 50 years. A person who has less than high school, over the course of that time period, make about $800,000 lifetime.
Wow.
That seemed like a lot until you do the math.
Not at 50 years, huh?
So when you divide that, right, it comes out to about $18,000 per year. Then you go up to an associate, it goes up to about $1 million, 1.2. Bachelor's degree, it goes up to 1.6. Master's degree, it goes up to 2.4.
Wow.
Advanced degrees, it goes up to about 3.2 million lifetime earnings.
Interesting.
So everyone is going to do some form of higher education.
Wow.
There's not a one size fit all. There is an opening for everyone. A way I like to think of it is use one credential as a starting point and build upon it. And just keep building upon it. Because at some point you tap out.
Yeah.
Wherever life is and where you feel comfortable, what you're willing to work towards, you tap out. But you cannot. I can only imagine the level of research it took for you to be able to start this podcast. That's school. That's learning. And we discredit the learning that it takes, the research that it takes. Also the socialization when it comes to being in a school setting.
It's true.
That's going to help propel people and move them in life, for sure.
Speak life, sowing seeds today, tomorrow's harvest. Dr. Yates, when you think about all the places the Lord has sent you, all the places you've been, all the things, all the people you've encountered and impacted, the people that have impacted you, you still seem very excited, you know? What do you believe in for the harvest that's still coming in your world?
That's an interesting question. I'm motivated to run the race until I believe God said, "You're done. You've done your part." My ultimate goal is to become a college president. So I believe God is like, yeah, I got you. That's easy. I'll take care of that. But I'm gonna need you to run this race for me. So what's down the road for me is to become a college president. I'm on pace. I'm on track. I'm checking the boxes of the things I need to do to get there. But I still think that there's an opportunity to help shape this next generation, because I think Alpha is the baby of the younger of the generations now. So after Gen Z is Alpha.
Where do they come up with this stuff, man? Like, I mean. And the names come out so fast. I feel like we were just saying millennials.
Yeah.
Now it is Alpha. I can't keep up.
So you correct.
Where they come up with this stuff?
So I really think the bottom part of millennials was that group that I'm Gen X, and millennials was the nephews, the little brothers who when I was in high school like watched us come through. But they were able to get some of the proverbial game because they were young and they were watching. But then on the other side of it, they were still young enough to try to grow up and they gonna move in the way they see fit. Whereas Generation X, we were told to do things and you just did it.
Right.
This younger generation, millennials, we wanted to make it a little bit better for them, right? Not as harsh for them. That's what we did. So then with millennials and then the group that came after them, they started to look at the grind of their parents and their grandparents. And they started to almost rail against it. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not working 30 years to get a house, to get a mortgage, to pay off the mortgage, to get a car. That sounds horrible. That's legit. Like, I laugh. Because what was missed by, and I'll say this is Gen Z, this is based off of pure data points. What I think they miss in Gen Z is that it's the equity. That's sweat equity. That's equity as far as what you put into a home over that 30-year mortgage and how that can help propel you into different places in life and protect you when you get older.
Sure.
That's the piece I think that's missing. I also think that Generation Z also, for some reason, have less respect for the elders, which is us. And I think we did pretty good than what we had for our elders. And I don't know how to fix that. That's a part where that's where the energy comes from, because I'm open to, and I'm gonna keep trying to figure it out. Like, how can we fix that? How can, because Alpha, they are young enough where they look at, like, I guess I'm almost like a grandfather's age now, right? So they look at me like I'm Poppy T, right? So they're like, all right, whatever. So there's a difference between them and my oldest grandsons are 35 now. They grew up with me. They know country. Where the younger ones, they know Dr. Yates. They call me Poppy T.
Right.
So I get how with Alpha, we have a chance to kind of mold them in a way. But for Generation Z, who can absorb so much information, the piece that's missing is the processing of that information.
Wow.
And we have to approach them in a way and not disrespect the part about not processing, but encourage the part of absorbing the information and take them step by step. Because if we could get Generation Z to unleash that ability to do 8 things at one time, absorb all this information in the way that they do it all at one time, and harness it, they can save us from that proverbial meteor that's going to strike in like 80 years. They can save us. But if not, we in trouble. I'm telling you that. If not, we are in trouble.
Dr. Toro Yates, man, thank you so much for pouring out. You are a real wealth of knowledge, a resource that I think a lot of people should be trying to find you, trying to look you up. How could they find you, Dr. Yates? How are you accessible to any community?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to find me. I have a YouTube page as well. You just type in my name and it'll come up. I post content, not a lot, because at this stage I'm not creating content as a vehicle. I'm creating content like I did something like today, and I have a way to push out a message. I push it out,
No doubt.
But the YouTube page is a way to be able to see some of my older things that I've done. Okay. It's not a lot,
sure,
but a lot of my speeches and things like that. And then the LinkedIn is probably the best place to contact me.
Well, we greatly appreciate you for, gracing us with your presence and your experience and all of your education. But the main thing is the heart that you have to walk in serving is a heart that we need more of. And, I hope that people take some of that away from this podcast, because you're talking about a man who's sowing seeds every day and has reaped and seen many harvests and is still impacting multiple generations because of his heart to do so. So thank you so much for your time today, man. It really, really blessed me.
It was a pleasure. And just keep doing what you're doing, because without the people putting their hands into that dirt and pulling out the weeds and planting the seeds and watering, that's care. And what you're doing with this podcast is care. And that, I believe, is how we can heal the world, is through that care, for sure.
That's strong. Thank you all for listening. Keep coming back for more. We love you. God bless. Thank you, Dr. Yates.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.